Hello, I'm Matt Williamson. What's going on? At Williamson NFL. Seen a lot of you at camp that love this podcast. I appreciate the shout outs, people yelling from the stands. I love it. Hey, keep it up, Matt. Good stuff. Appreciate it quite a bit. I am recording this Saturday evening. We got one more padded practice tomorrow and then a day off. So I'm kind of going to do what my plan is. I'm not going to record anything Sunday. I'm driving home finally. I've hardly been home. And then after that, Monday, when they don't practice, I'm kind of going to do like my halftime of camp, where we will be a little over halfway through the practices of camp, maybe highlight 12 different players or something like that. So that's my plan. So still accumulating that data, who I want to talk about. If there's someone in specific you want me to, shoot me a text or a line, no matter what. But a trend that I've been on, a kick I've been on, is sacks. We're going to talk about sacks, baby. Maybe you and me. I couldn't help myself. A lot of coffee here. But we have talked about this a lot lately. I have not calmed down with this since the NFL season ended, to be very honest with you, that the Steelers must and should and absolutely can create more sacks on defense. They are great at pressures. They're great at batting balls down. They're great at jarring the football loose, causing fumbles. But their sack numbers were mediocre. Now, I think a lot of that has to do with the back seven, not the front five or whatever. I think they are the best pass rushing team in the league. They have the best pass rushers. We've talked about this a lot. Okay. But what I did was I found more numbers to back this up, and they're even stronger than I originally thought. So if you rewind about a week or so, I went over key factors to winning and losing football games in the NFL. And the number one is clearly turnover differential. What leads to wins and losses in the NFL? Turnover differential is one. Second and third are explosive play differential. How many explosives do you create versus how many you allow? That's differential. And sack differential. Well, the Steelers are really good in turnover differential last year. Second best in the league behind the Bills. Shockingly, they were +9 in explosive play differential. But I look at this in a positive manner. As I mentioned last week, what drags them down is sack differential. They took 9 more sacks than they created. Now, some of that is on Wilson and Fields, 1,000%, because they hold the ball too long and they take sacks and they have their whole career. It's two of the worst in the league, really, at taking sacks over the last 10 years. Rodgers is not. So, in order to get your sack differential from a weakness to a strength, you have to take fewer and you have to create more. Now, you might think I'm nuts here, but I don't think the reason that this should and better get better is the pass blocking is going to improve or the pass rush is going to improve. I think because they have better coverage, more variety of coverage, more man coverage, better corners, you should be able to make that quarterback pat the football a half a second longer, and that's going to end up in sacks. I have no reservations about the Steeler pass rush. They just need time to get there. They also may blitz more because they trust these corners. I also, as I've told you guys for 10 years, sacks are a quarterback stat as much as they are an offensive line stat. And really going from just about anybody from Wilson and Fields should net a positive for the Steelers, let alone Rodgers, who's so good from the neck up and the ball comes out so quick, sometimes too quick, but he's not going to take the same number of sacks Wilson and Fields are. I'll bet everything I have, even if he has 3 offensive line injuries. So I expect this number to be drastically better. And as stated, that results in more wins. Now, do I know that their turnover differential will be amongst the best in the league? I don't know. Will their explosive play differential be amongst the best in the league? I don't know. But the weakness in those 3 categories, I very much think will become a strength. And if it doesn't, I'm going to be highly critical. And on the second half of this podcast, I'm going to tell you why it's so important. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. With baseball season in full swing, BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting while the games are being played. We keep the dog days of summer rolling with the largest selection of odds on everything, with updated odds on MLB, UFC, and boxing, to tennis and NFL futures. BetOnline remains the best online source for all your sports wagering info. In between games, head over to the BetOnline Casino and all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. BetOnline, the game starts here. Here's the short of it before I really nerd out on you. And I know a lot of you like when I nerd out and pretend like you don't. Just by taking a sack on a possession, this is league-wide, it's nothing to do with Steelers, 32 football teams. Just by taking a sack on a possession, you cut your points per drive by more than half while lowering your odds of scoring a touchdown by 2/3. So think about having a negative sack differential as opposed to a positive sack differential, which I expect to change. You cut your points per drive by more than half when you take a sack versus not an offense, while lowering your odds of scoring a touchdown by nearly 2/3. Touchdown drives turn into field goals or punts, or let alone sack fumbles, things like that. Now, I also found this interesting. NFL quarterbacks took a sack on 21% of their pressures last year. Now, I know a pressure is a little of a bit of a gray area, but these come from NFL.com. And what that means is, okay, I am officially under pressure. It's 2 seconds into the 3 seconds, whatever, into the play. I'm a quarterback that's officially under pressure. Now it's on me. The blocking failed me or no longer is doing their job. Do I take a sack? Do I make a positive play out of it? Pressure to sack ratio is becoming a very big and useful trend and fad in scouting, in college guys, in pro guys. Caleb Williams particularly is terrible about that. When he's under pressure, he almost always takes a sack. There's an art to Peyton Manning never took sacks, even when he was under pressure. You know what I mean? And Rodgers is pretty good at it too. But just league-wide, NFL quarterbacks took a sack on 21% of their pressures last year. That's the highest rate over the past 5 years, which surprises me because I think quarterbacks are more athletic than ever. Not really a Steeler application there. You would think they'd be better at eluding sacks once pressured. But I also think it just reflects on the total freaks that are doing the pressuring and sacking. They're harder to get away from than ever. They're all shapes and sizes. And I always have told you guys, D-line is way ahead of O-line in this league. But now pressures are even turning into sacks at a higher rate, basically, than ever. So this becomes even more important in today's NFL. So here we go. Here's the true numbers that back up everything I'm telling you. Points per drive when you take a sack. These are, we're just going to look at this through an offensive lens. But obviously the same is true if you're the Steelers defensive coordinator, it's the same thing. So every drive in the league last year, when they took a sack, ended up averaging 1.12 points on the scoreboard. Okay? Without a sack, it's 2.30. It's double. It's more than double. You can't take sacks. And a lot of times that's on the quarterback. Throw it away. 1.12 versus 2.3 points in terms of sack versus not sacking. How about how often you score? How often you put points up on the scoreboard? Well, when you take a sack, the league only scores on 26% of their drives. When they don't take a sack during the entire, it could be a 13-play drive. It's 42%. 26 versus 42% in terms of just producing points on a drive. This one, though, How about producing a touchdown? When you take a sack, it's 8%. Only 8% of the drives in the league, when there's a sack on that drive, only 8% produce a touchdown. That's opposite 26%. If you don't take a sack and you're the average NFL team, 26% of your drives end up in touchdowns versus 8% if you do. How about when you punt? 50% of drives end in a punt when you take a sack. Now, that often could be on third down, of course, which boom, all right, now I got to settle for a field goal or a punt. So what? That's great. You know, I mean, that still applies. As opposed to 31%. 31% do not end up in a punt. They end up in something else without a sack. And I'm not asking for the world here with the Steelers. That's why I keep coming back to it. I expect it. I'll be critical if they don't improve their sack differential. They're the best pass rushing team in the league. The back seven is well more equipped to get those guys home, not just get pressures and be disruptive. And your quarterback is not a sack machine like you played with last year. So there you have it. I mean, again, the short of it is just by taking a sack on a possession, you cut your points per drive by more than half while lowering your odds of scoring a touchdown by nearly 2/3. These are, and you also have a over 50% chance to punt the football away, as we just talked about. These are massive discrepancies. Massive discrepancies. Now, that doesn't mean, hey, Williamson's telling me if they go from -9 to +15 in sack differential, they're going to be undefeated and storm through the league. No, but there's a whole lot of data and evidence that I just showed you for something that is extremely correctable for them to really pay dividends with this. All right, everyone, I'm going to enjoy my day away from my dorm room here, and I won't talk to you in the next 24 hours, but unless something big happens, over and out.